As I sit here typing away on my computer, I can't help but think about the strange neighbors I've had over the years. There was the one who always wore a mask, even indoors, and the one who insisted on watering her lawn at 3 a.m. every night. But the one that still gives me the heebie-jeebies to this day is Mrs. Jenkins. Mrs. Jenkins lived in the house next door to me with her 2 children, Timmy and Sarah. They were a nice enough family, but there was something just a little bit off about them. Maybe it was the way Mrs. Jenkins would always smile and wave at me, even when I was just walking down the street. Or the way Timmy and Sarah would always be outside, playing in the yard, no matter the time of day or weather. It wasn't until I heard the strange noises coming from their house that I started to get really suspicious. At first, it sounded like someone was banging pots and pans together, but as the days went by, the noises became more and more disturbing. I could hear children crying and what sounded like a loud, angry voice yelling. One night, I decided to take a walk over to Mrs. Jenkins's house to see if everything was okay. As I approached the front door, I noticed that all of the windows were covered in black curtains and the front door was locked. I knocked several times, but there was no answer. I was just about to turn and go back home when I heard a faint voice calling out to me. "Help me," it said. "Please help me." The voice was coming from inside the house, and it sounded like it was coming from a child. I tried the door again, but it was still locked. I was just about to give up when I heard the voice again. "Help me," it said. "My mommy is hurting me." I knew I had to do something, so I called the police and told them what I had heard. They arrived just a few minutes later, and they broke down the door to investigate. What they found inside was something straight out of a horror movie. Mrs. Jenkins was indeed hurting her children, and the noises I had heard were the sounds of their cries and pleas for help. Timmy and Sarah were both found in the basement, bound and gagged, with marks on their bodies that suggested they had been subjected to physical abuse for a long time. Mrs. Jenkins was arrested and put on trial, but the worst part was yet to come. As I sat in the courtroom, listening to the details of her crimes, I couldn't help but feel a chill run down my spine. Because, as I looked over at Mrs. Jenkins, I saw something in her eyes that made my blood run cold. It was a look of pure, unadulterated evil. And that, my friends, is the true story of my creepy neighbor, Mrs. Jenkins.